Hello and welcome to the second webinar as part of this year's Smart Money Week in Agriculture, brought to you by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Center for Agricultural Profitability and Nebraska Extension. I'm Shannon Sand, Extension Educator and Agricultural Economist with the Center for Ag Profitability. Ag Smart Money Week aims to equip farmers and ranchers with the tools and strategies to improve their financial management and risk management to build success in their business. We're holding at least one webinar every day this week, and you can find the full schedule and registration information on the Center for Ag Profitability's website, cap.unl.edu/smartmoney. This evening, we'll learn about the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Agricultural Budget Calculator program, which we also just call ABC, and specifically its new livestock budgeting function. With many livestock operations facing unique challenges when it comes to tracking costs and planning for profit, this session will focus on how producers can use ABC to create, compare, and analyze enterprise budgets for livestock operations. Whether you're expanding, downsizing, or maintaining your herd, you'll learn practical ways to make the numbers work for your business. Presenting for us is Glennis McClure, a farm and ranch management analyst and extension educator with the Center for Agricultural Profitability. Glennis leads the development of the Agricultural Budget Calculator program and has also led Nebraska Extension's development of crop livestock enterprise budgets for a number of years. Questions are welcome. Please feel free to put them in the chat. Glennis, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you, and welcome everyone. This is exciting. It's good to kind of help kick off the week on agriculture smart money. And thanks, Shannon, for all your coordination, and of course to Ryan for all that he does for us and
Yes.
you, etc. So couldn't do it without both of you. So anyway, I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll be looking at the Ag Budget Calculator live here in a little bit. But for now, I'm just going to go through sort of some background information, especially if you're new to the Ag Budget Calculator. We've been working on this for quite some time. I was working on some things today, and actually in 2021, we launched some of the features with the Ag Budget Calculator that focused on the crop side of things. And then this year, we were able to launch the livestock budgets. In particular, since Nebraska is a very heavy cattle state, right now it's working really well for the cattle side of things. So we'll have, the ability at some point to add other livestock, breeds in or whatever to do budgeting. And I think we could make it work, a little bit anyway. But it's kind of focused right now on the cattle side of things. But so I'm gonna run through that with you. But I guess if you know the program, and if you've already worked with the program to some degree with the crops side, then you'll know kind of how the program works, and it's easy then, I think, to switch over and do other budgeting such as the livestock. So can you guys see my screen, Shannon?
Yep, it looks good. I see a cow on the front.
I'll go ahead and proceed. Okay, thank you. I get it to go. Okay, well, of course, as I mentioned, cattle is pretty significant in Nebraska. Cattle outnumber our population by 3-to-1 with 6.8 million head of cattle. And there's just over 2 million now in our population in Nebraska. And we're actually second only to Texas on the overall number of cattle on inventory in Nebraska. At least these are some of the numbers I checked a few months back. So anyway, we have, as Shannon mentioned, we have long worked on enterprise budgets. We think it's really important that folks understand, I guess the primary reason is for cost of production and understanding what we're really putting into, our various livestock, entities, and also on our crop side. So we actually have a lot of those things posted already on our CAP website. So we do have some budgets that were created in Excel. And several years ago, we met with groups across the state and worked in different sort of geographical areas to come up with some different cattle budgets. I'm in the process right now, and I'll show you some examples where we have now turned those into the budgets using the Ag Budget Calculator. And so from there, the one thing nice about this calculator is that you can create an account for yourself. for your operation. And then you can go in and actually find maybe a cattle budget that I've already put up into the ag budget calculator. You can download it into your account and then begin working with it, making modifications that might fit your operation. We always suggest, again, we've got a lot of crop budgets. I'm working on the 26 crop budgets right now. And we've got about 80 some of those budgets. Okay. But again, they are really just to be used as a guide. So we always encourage people to understand and to be able to do their own budgets. And we try to help that process by loading in some of our university budgets. And then you can download those and work with those. And aside from that, you don't even have to look at the university budgets. You can just use the ag budget calculator to create your own budgets from scratch. All right, just start and do those. So again, this is in here back from 25. We actually added a popcorn budget. It's an irrigated popcorn budget. As I said, I'm working on those budgets for 2026. I'm hopeful to have those completed even this week or next. I'm not sure exactly when the published date will get out, but I'll have those available. And we're at, I guess, up to 84 this year because we added another cover crop. Cover crops have obviously become pretty important, so we added that into the mix this year. So, so if you're wondering, again, we've got a page dedicated on our CAP website for ABC. So cap.unl.edu/ABC here. And then there you can look at the different training programs. So I do this program, every so often. So in case we catch the new folks that are just signing on to the program, as well as the crop side of things. And then whenever we add enhancements to the program, we're usually doing some kind of training for that. Shannon's been working with me and others now to work on the specialty crops. So we do actually have a test site right now where we're loading in the specialty crops side of things. And so again, we do sort of ongoing trainings to help people understand what we're doing and enhancing this program. One of the proposals or the projects that we have funded here this year into next is to work on a marketing plan that coincides with our ag budget calculator. And that again, that will be pretty focused on the crop side, but it always is very helpful. If we start on one side of things like the crops, we can hopefully eventually do a similar sort of module or whatever, if you will, on the marketing side for livestock, perhaps. So again, it's a web-based program. You can actually look at it on your mobile device, but I always suggest, just as you're doing your accounting, you don't generally do your accounting on your mobile device. You really should sit down at your PC and work on your budgets. And, again, looking ahead for the new year, what do things look like? And I know there's banks that are interested or will be interested as you're completing 2025, what does your 2026 look like? And you can do some projections. And that's really what it is. Budgets are projections. And I always say budgets can change, but we do the very best we can to kind of have an outlook for ourselves on how things look. And then also, as I say, it's really good. It's really a good idea, of course, to use those good records that you're keeping. Records are foundational to everything we do financially. Okay. And we can use those records then to create our budgets and try to be realistic with those budgets. And also realize, though, sometimes budgets change. I mean, I might go and buy, some feed right now or some hay right now, and 2 months from now it's cheaper or something. How does that change my budget? I've made a different decision on whatever I'm going to feed those animals, or I'm making some decisions on changing my fertilizer plan in my crops. So as I do that, how does that change my cost of production? So once you have those foundational budgets, you can use them to make some decisions and to tweak them as you go along if needed. So we actually have, again, as I mentioned, enterprise budgets that we've loaded into the program, and so those can be downloaded and modified. And the nice thing with the crop side of things is that again, you can do budgets farm by farm, field by field. And, I can see whether that farm 10 miles from me, is really worth, farming. Is it good ground? Is it poor ground? Is it something that really isn't returning what it should? I can look at a budget and kind of make some of those decisions, as well as we'll see, and we'll kind of demonstrate the livestock piece of it with you tonight, kind of how you can, look at different livestock, methods or whatever, livestock operations or whatever, and then see what it looks like for you. And then we have done our budgets forever, really, looking at both cash and economic costs. Economic being a total cost, which includes non-cash. So you can look at, hey, what's the cash that I'm going to put into this crop, or what's the cash outlay I'm going to have in my cow-calf or my backgrounding enterprise, whatever it might be. Okay. But the economic side of things is to look at depreciation, which is non-cash, our opportunity cost of investment, some unpaid labor. Those are kinds of things that we can add into budgets and look at a total cost picture versus a cash cost side of things. Again, as we've gone along, we've enhanced the program with different features, including especially on the crop side, some break even look analysis, I guess, a risk module where we're looking at corn and soybeans and crop insurance decision making. You'll see in the livestock, we've got a gains report added in. So not only are you looking at, here's what my total costs are on these different enterprises, but what does it look like on a non-breeding enterprise if I'm going to feed the cattle for a period of time? What does that look like? So actually, I should have updated this today. We've actually got over 2,200 users, and we've kind of tracked a little bit about what we do have for different enterprises in there. We do not look at anyone's individual budgets. It really would make no sense to us to look at what you're doing in your account, other than the fact that we see how many budgets are created, how many users we have, and that kind of thing. Because again, there's been questions about, well, would the university just use my information for, some kind of research? No, you cannot, because we do not know if you're messing with the program, if you've just kind of tested a few things. We don't know if they're true or, if they're real, reality kind of things. So obviously it doesn't make any sense for us to even look at any individual's budgets and work with those at all. But of course, we can work with our own and put our own in, and then you can use those. So, and we continue to do workshops and trainings and so on. We've got some really good feedback on how folks have used their budgets to make some decisions. So again, here's someone that was comparing crop performance in different fields. I've used it in this last year, project my farm's 2025 performance. Lineup financing. In this case, this producer said, this helped me make a decision to buy some more ground. And this was a couple of years ago, actually, that we received that quote from someone. So as I mentioned, we've got different analysis features in the program. Break even, we have a crop comparison, break even, look at things there, a sensitivity chart, the risk analysis, again, corn and soybeans and related to crop insurance and so on. So, and we've kind of added as we go along, and we really do. I don't want to fail to say that we really do appreciate feedback from folks that are using the program, and questions they may have, not understanding how to do certain things. It's really important to stay in touch and to understand, kind of where our users are with things. So you should be able to communicate with us whenever you run across anything that you say, well, maybe this could be made a little bit better than this. And I jot down suggestions. And then we meet, and Shannon's oftentimes on those calls with us, but we meet with our programmer really regularly to work on enhancements and changes and so on that are needed to the program. All right. So I just want to mention that, if we had a cow-calf and operation, and let's say, we typically sell some of our, wean calves. This came up with on a 300 cow herd, 273 head of wean calves that we would have potentially to sell or whatever. In this case, what they wanted to do here is sell half the steers and half the heifers and then retain the rest of them, and it's marked there as a transfer. So that means then I'm going to look at taking the value of those calves, just as if I was going to sell those, their weight and their value, and then move those into a backgrounding enterprise, move those up to the next stage. And eventually I might feed those out. And what does that whole scenario look like? So basically I'm transferring from the cow-calf operation into a non-breeding operation. I've got some examples. I've worked with our educator out in the Panhandle thus far to work on a retaining heifer budget. So as they're growing, they're just taking some of those heifers out. And then what does that look like? What kind of cost? What's it costing me to grow those heifers for replacements or even to sell eventually? So you can do different things with different enterprises that way. This is just a look, and we will get into the program, but this is just a brief look at, again, this is that backgrounding enterprise. So you name it as you wish. This was 137 cows from that 300 cow herd. And so I've got the total and the per head figures. And again, this is a condensed report. We can actually open up, when we're working with the program, these little triangles to provide some detail. So I could, and I can't right now because it's just a screenshot, but if I clicked on this triangle, we could see the different feed that went into this enterprise. I can see what I added in for veterinary and so on. So I can have a condensed report like this, or I can open it up and expand for more information. And so in this case, we were looking at economic costs. And the other thing that you'll see with our livestock budgets and our crop budgets for that matter, that we actually have a cash and economic. As I mentioned, that's important. Where folks can look at their total cost on an economic basis versus their cash costs that go into an enterprise. So I could have toggled, and this says right here, it's an economic budget. So on an economic side of things, I'm showing a negative and slightly negative return per head. Okay. Now on the cash side of things, that would probably look different because I have equipment depreciation in here, and chances are I might have some unpaid labor in here. And so on. So I've got this opportunity cost because again, there's some carrying costs. I've got this investment in these animals, and we figure like around a 3% return on investment that we should calculate for the period of time that we're holding those. So there is an economic or an opportunity cost that's part of economic budgeting, whereas on the cash side, that would not show up. So just a few things about that report. And that's kind of what it looks like. You can print them off, you can save them, you can go in and modify your budget and kind of look at new reports and so on. This is a quick look, as I mentioned, on the livestock side. On the non-breeding side, this is backgrounding. So here we're looking at where we had a starting weight and ending weight. How much did they gain during the period of time? We were just looking at 65 days. We added the feed that we were gonna give them and what that was worth and so on, and what the average daily gain was. Again, these are examples. They're probably may not be reality necessarily like your case, but this is just an example. And I'm not a livestock expert. I work with our extension educators and our extension specialists in coming up with some of this information. And also it's important for us to hear and work individually with farmers once in a while, or groups of farmers, to learn and to do some of these things. But in this case, we have what is the cost of gain per pound, and then what is that value? So basically, in this case, it's like it's showing me that I wouldn't necessarily make any money on this. And again, this is on the economic side of things as well. I wouldn't make, maybe not the thing to do to carry them forward and put more. And again, obviously, it might depend on what's the feed cost doing, right? Because this could have been, we might have done this when feed was a little higher priced. Okay. So got to keep those things in mind. And then this is just kind of a look at what that feed summary would look like. So what did we have? And I don't know that this is necessarily part of that enterprise that we just looked at, but what did we provide to that group of animals? We fed them some BBG cubes, prairie hay, rolled corn, salt and mineral. And how much was that total? So it just kind of gives you a look back at what that was. Okay. So after creating enterprise budgets, as I've kind of mentioned already, cost of production kind of helps us understand and do some pricing. If we can do some forward pricing based on what we're calculating for our cost of production, hey, why not? Okay. So this kind of helps us with information on that and understanding our break-even figures. Also, one of the things about the Ag Budget Calculator that I think we really love is that it is a great teaching tool, and it helps guide people on what really ought to, what should you include in your enterprise budgets. And one of the things that's often overlooked is our overhead costs. We all have overhead costs. We have some, property taxes to pay, insurance costs, that might be general farm insurance, general utilities. We have accounting costs for our whole operation. And so there's a percentage perhaps that goes to your livestock enterprise and your crop enterprise. And we've worked on getting that set up in the Ag Budget Calculator so you can account for those things and, again, budget accordingly. Whoops, went too fast there. All right. So creating a list of inputs and cash needs for the production season, I think is an important thing, that helps us. There's some reports in here that it's like, again, on the crop side of things, if I have multiple farms and fields and let's say I've got 10, 12 different, crop enterprises, and I know I'm going to need, I'm putting in fertilizer and chemicals and, all these different things into my budgets. I can actually run a report and see what's that total. I bring that all together and what's that total that I need. And the livestock side of things too, we'll have those feed reports. And so you'd have that as well. What am I going to need to get through this, period of time that I'm budgeting for? And also one of the features we've built into the program is a monthly cash flow. And so as you are creating your budgets, you don't have to, but you can actually designate months. And then then as those costs are figured into your budgets, those will show up in a cash flow statement. And then you can work with that statement. You can actually, right now, we have it so that you can download that as a CSV file. And if you have, let's say, a Excel template and you want to work with it further, you certainly can. So that's a nice feature that we've added into this. Because again, if you're planning, you're kind of figuring this is generally when I pay for things, or this is when this production season, when this happens, that's what the cash flow thing is all about. And then we've got features built in to look at overall profit and loss. So if we bring all of our budgets together. Now, we're going to be working on, hopefully this next year with another, grant proposal that we're just starting to work on or whatever, is pulling all of those, pulling the livestock together a little bit more with the crops, in that if I'm growing hay and I want to look at that cost of production of hay and I want to transfer that over and feed it to my livestock. That's something we've had a vision for a long time, and we actually just need the programming time to get it done. So, and then there's an overall profit and loss that eventually we could look together once we have all those enterprises, capable of bringing them together in the program. So you can actually do again, a pro forma, a look ahead at your profit and loss situation. This is just a picture with the a cash flow would look like, and this is a summary where I would add in my revenue. This is a summary of some of my field operation costs, labor, fuel, materials, and so on. But this is kind of just to look at what that looks like. And then actually when you're expanding that and we have all of your expenses in all these different categories, it actually becomes a pretty big report. So, all right. So as I mentioned, we'll be adding, we're hoping to add in, and so that it's really working well for some other livestock entities. We have egg production on our farm. Not sure that we'll be headed that direction, but again, we are a commercial, breeding barn that is on contract. So, yeah, we have our cost of production, but we get paid just so much per each dozen of those eggs. So anyway, and then as I mentioned, the specialty crops. So Shannon, is there questions or anything that have come up?
No, not yet, Glennis.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's see now. Shannon, can you see my screen with the Ag Budget Calculator? Got it?
Yes, ma'am. I see you there.
Awesome. Okay, good. All right. So with that, I've flipped over now to show you, I'm into one of my accounts that I have in the Ag Budget Calculator. And I'm going to just show you and focus a little bit on the livestock side of things. So here I would click on the Livestock Enterprise tab. And there's the crop side of things over here, but I'll just do that. And for 2026, oh, I copied over. I started a 50 cow herd here, but I'm going to go back to this year. If you notice, I have a bunch of years created for different reasons, different things that I do with my work. But I've got this year, 2025 year, that I've established. And a lot of times here's this list. These are important things that you can add into the program just as you're getting started. And one would be setting up a year, and that's with the annual rates. And the annual rates right there, I can put in what I project to have, like let's say 2026, what I'm figuring for fuel costs, diesel, gas. So anytime I use a certain, let's say tractor that's on diesel, it's going to pull that rate. And also our interest rates are included. So it's pretty basic information that we add in, but that's how we create a year. And then we always want to pay attention when we're working along, again, what that budget year is. Because in my case, I've got a lot of different years and I can get pretty confused. But I've got this year here that I have been using a lot for demos lately, demonstration purposes lately. And then I can add in my labor. So I'll just click on that and show you. I've got a list of folks in here. I've got Shannon in here. Shannon, she
I
is a
worked
relative.
very hard for Glennis.
No, I have her marked as family. Okay,
Yeah,
so she's my daughter.
I'm
Okay.
unpaid.
She's unpaid, but she's still adding value. So what is her value on an hourly rate? So I could set up all of our labor, either paid or unpaid, on an hourly or salary basis and figure how many hours. I figure you're only going to work about 100 hours on this operation. Okay. And, again, I have her marked as family. So not only do we have it so that you can add in some hourly rates, but you can actually put in, what if there's some other cash benefits or other non-cash benefits? Let's say you drive the pickup and there's value that, that you have for that. So we could add those kinds of things into our labor list. Okay. Power units, this is where I would add my tractors and my combines and those things and add in what I paid for them, what a list price is, how long I'm going to keep them so we can figure the depreciation, repair costs, those kinds of things, as well as implements. And then materials would be, again, my pesticides, my seed, those kinds of things. And then on the livestock side, of course, our feed list. I'll just click on that. And we can go down here. So remember these triangles you can open up. So I've got a number of different things added in. And this is where I add in what the cost would be. So I've got this alfalfa hay now at $150 a ton. I could go in and I could change that and edit it with this pencil here. If I wanted to clean up this list, I could just delete some things if I wanted to. Okay.
So, Glennis, can I ask a question that I think if I would want to ask if I were an attendee real quick? So our feed and input prices change year to year. So when we're doing 25 versus 24,
Mm-hmm.
can those
Mm-hmm.
change?
Yes. Yes. So I'll just click on this alfalfa hay here and show you that that is related to this year that I'm working on. Okay.
Okay.
So if I've done budgets in prior years, which I hadn't for livestock, but if I'd done budgets in prior years, then I might have a different figure that is in the system. Okay.
Okay. Okay,
So,
that's great to know. Yeah.
you can also, yeah, let's say you buy though two different, let's say different lots of hay or whatever. Let's say you buy some for 150, you buy some for 120. Again, you might want to just average that cost out and add it in here. Or you can say alfalfa hay 1, and then what's that value? Alfalfa hay 2. But you got to keep track of.
Well,
I
I
have
was just thinking even you could do like spring, fall, and winter. If you do, a lot of people do purchases throughout the
yeah.
season. So yeah, there's a lot of
So if
options
that's your
that I think.
practice, then you can identify it. So like right here, I could say right here, alfalfa hay. And let's say this is my spring purchase. Okay, right? So then I've just changed that name and it's associated with that budget year, and this is the price, and I could just change the price. I could buy, we've got different quantities in here too, obviously. Alfalfa hay on a per ton basis. I might buy bushels of corn. I might buy it by the bale, So it just really depends on how you look at it, or so many pounds. Okay. So I made that change. So I'm actually going to go back and get that out of there, because I think if I don't go in and change, I might have messed up one of the budgets.
Yeah, no, I know this is the one you use a lot. So yeah.
It's just for demonstration. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
I'm in this
great.
I'm in the range input list. And then again, if I have crops, I would have my irrigation systems as well. So that's the manage inputs list. And we do have little question marks in here. So I can click on a question mark, and it gives me, it's like, what is this talking about? So those are help messages throughout. My action items, you notice when I was going to save, the save came up over here. So action items are generally over here on my right, particularly if I'm going to save something. But I use my back button quite often, and then just kind of back out to where I was. And I'm going to see where it takes me here. Okay, because I went back to that labor list, right? And then we went over to the feed and looked at the feed. And now I'm back over here, and then go back to this one. Okay, so you just you get used to sort of maneuvering around. There's really not a lot that can foul you up with this program. We tried to make it pretty user friendly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on, if it's red and underlined, it's clickable. So this says copy. Chances are I copied it from the university budgets. And where are those? I've mentioned those. Here's our livestock budgets that we have included, the cattle budgets, basically, that we've included already in our ABC program. Actually, there's a few of them. So I've got a South Central 150 head, and we call them sample budgets. Again, they aren't to be used verbatim. I mean, you need to go in and add your own information in, because what we're doing is not what you're doing, chances are, but it could be close, right? But we've got some different size cow herds. Here's a back running budget. Here's one where we grew some replacement heifers. There's some more of those, and so on. And I guess we did a replacement heifer in South Central as well. Okay, so I can just view those and take a look and see if it kind of matches what I'm doing. And if I hit copy, then actually that budget, everything associated with that budget will go into my account. And then I can actually, I'll just hit that. I'll do that right now. And it says you're about ready to put that into your own account. We'll go ahead and continue. Well, it says I've already got that in use. And that's probably one of the issues, because I'm also working with those livestock budgets on the university side. So sometimes it wouldn't do that for you, because you don't have that in your system. And so it gives me a little bit of an error message there. But I was able to get this one copied over, and this backgrounding budget copied over. And we do have them designated breeding or non-breeding. And actually, the other nice thing is that this says I could copy this. So I could go in, if I hit that right now, yeah, I can go in now and say, okay, so I've worked on 2025 for this budget, and this is where this little copy thing comes. I'm going to say now, this is my 2026. And here's where I could hit this 2026 year and look ahead and say, create budget copy, and it's been copied. So everything in that budget now is in that 26, or it's in 26. So let me look at that just really quickly here. Yep. I'm not using the 2025B, I'm in the 2026. So I, from year to year, if I work with this thing and I have, some budgets designed, I can actually just use that copy feature and then, hey, say, well, what's changed now? What's going to change for 2026? So it's really the same budget. So we can take a look at it even from this vantage point in 2026. All right, so these are the tabs then that we're going to fill out on this particular livestock enterprise. This is where the basic information is, and I just carried that over from my, that other year. I can set up my time frame. I could say, if I wanted to, that I'm gonna say November, to November, because I wean calves, let's say, in November. I could switch my time frame there if I wanted, or I can go on that calendar year basis as we were just looking at. And then right now we've just got the cattle as the type, and then breeding, and this is a breeding budget. So it stayed that way, so I can't change it. So, but anyway, I can save it because I've changed those dates, right? So that's just setting up the enterprise. And then over here, we'll kind of work this way now. But this is where we put in our numbers, all right? So if I don't have 300 cows, but I generally have 200 bred females around, or that's my goal. I can change that number. And then I can also say, well, I'm going to figure like 7 years. If you notice, when I click that, these numbers are interactive. So when I was at 6 years, I would need this many replacements generally. And this is my replacement rate. And I would have, I can plug in how many cows, I might lose. Let's say I'm going to lose 4. Perhaps that's generally what happens. That changes that cow death rate. But if I change this and said, no, I'm going to keep them around at least 7 years, then that changes that replacement rate. Okay. So those are interactive. I could have changed this number and that would have changed that and so on. So, okay. And then we put in the value of our cows and our coal value. We can do an estimate there because that's really kind of where we're getting at some of the depreciation cost. And it's kind of figured from that. Then on my weaning rate. So what would I have if I have 91% weaning rate? I'd have about this many calves. How many bulls do I need? Now I changed those numbers. So let's say we only need 10 bulls and I'm going to keep them around about 5 years. Okay. So that means I need about 2 every year, replacement rate of 20%. I'm not going to figure losing a bull, but that could happen, of course. That's not typical, but it could happen. So that just tells me I'm going to pull 2, put in those values. Excuse me. And then, so then I've got my breeding stock replacement. So I need 37, okay, 35.7. And that comes off of this number right here. So, I changed those numbers. So it's telling me basically I've overshot this. Okay. So I need to go in and change these numbers as well. I think I'll just say 34. I can say 45, whatever. And what would I be purchasing those bred heifers for? Maybe more
Right
than
now,
that.
it'd be close to 4,000.
Yeah. So see, I could change those numbers right now. And then here's where I could put in a month of when I typically buy. And I might have multiple purchases. I don't have to have just one purchase here, but I could put in a month here that I typically buy those. And then that would help me set up for that cash flow. All right. Because I'm going to need that cash at that point in time. And then if I had to purchase any replacement bulls, in this case, I don't need any. I'm going to just trash that and say, okay, don't need those. Right now, or let's say, I guess I did say I needed 2, so I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm just gonna, buy bulls again. Like what, I don't know, let's say 5,000 and when that might be again. Okay. So, and then here's my wean calves. And again, I'm probably over on my number because I changed that number up above. But here is that example where I'm selling half the calf crop and I'm transferring half of it over to another enterprise. So what I would have to do here then is set up that backgrounding enterprise. And so when I do that, if I had marked this as a transfer, so let's look at this. If I, rather than selling at the market, I mark it as a transfer, then it's set up in the program. And when I do subsequent enterprises, then it's available then to pull those in from this enterprise. That's how that works. Okay. So again, my numbers are going to be a little off because I have less calves. I had less cows. But I'm just to proceed on. And then also this is where I would show selling so many cows. And this is where my numbers are going to be off a little bit too, right? I'm not selling that many in the end. So things are going to be a little off. So I'm not going to save all of that. I could save it right now, but since I changed some things, I'm going to just say, changes you made may not be saved. Yep. That's fine. I didn't really want that to happen. Okay. So I'll go back here. So I was working on these numbers, and I can open those up as I've showed you. Now here's the feed, very important, of course, for livestock. Here's our cows. So I can show that I've got them on pasture so long, and what is that worth? What is that? What would I pay for that? Now I may own my own pasture, and you're welcome to put whatever value in on that owned pasture. But we suggest, as economists, that you put a value on that. What is your opportunity cost? If you weren't using that pasture, what could you be renting it for? So that's valuing that. Again, that is your decision as you're working on budgets, what you do with that value. Same with prairie hay and so on. Now I might show a value of if I had to purchase it. Or I may say, well, I have costs in it. And here's my costs, and I'm going to use that figure on my prairie hay. Okay. And again, that's what I'm talking about, that as we integrate our crops and our livestock further, as we use ABC, we'll be able to take those costs. If you do a prairie hay budget, what is the cost that you want to carry forward, or what are you looking at for your costs that you can carry forward in these? Okay. So we've got the cow feed. If we were going to give anything to the calves, we could add it there, and also the bulls, all right. And so that's that on the cow-calf enterprise. And the expenses then, we've got a list of expenses. We can open those up and say, okay, we kind of worked on this a little bit. You can enter a total. You can say, well, I know in our cow-calf, generally we spend X amount on vet and health, okay? You can put that in as sort of the easy button. Okay, so much per head or so much in total. All right. Or I can list individual as I've done here. Here's a $30 per head figure. Here's some net expense in total. So I've started to add, and I can add various entries here if I want. So we tried, as we're working on this livestock budgeting, we've got sort of the easy button if you want to just plug in a simple number. On a per head or total basis, or go a little bit more detailed with your entries. Same with labor. I could list the individual laborers, or I could figure, I'm going to figure so much paid labor for this enterprise and so much unpaid labor. So unpaid labor is mine, and I've got, this is pretty important. I need to have some family living. I'm going to figure, a nice chunk of unpaid labor here. Just see what it looks like. What does that return look like in the end? Am I covering those unpaid costs? So because eventually I'd be pulling some of that out of this enterprise to live on. What am I using for machinery and equipment? And I can list individuals. So here's a medium tractor. You'll see we have our lists in here of different equipment, power units, and usually they're marked with UNL. And again, now that's where though you would go in and you would add your own information, your own equipment, power units, and you would do that again in this area up here. So once it's in the list, I can call on that and say, okay, I use that tractor so many hours for this enterprise, or I'm estimating that. So that'll provide some costs for you, repair costs, fuel costs, labor for different operations, and your depreciation, of course, non-paid, and opportunity costs. Same with your implements. So what do you use in for this enterprise? There might be some other non-feed materials and inputs. There might be custom services that we pay. Add those in. Marketing. I'll just show you that we had set it up, so we didn't look at that. But when I sold those calves, or I sold those cows, I had a percentage. I was taking off a percentage of commissions so that it would add into a marketing cost. And so you'll see that that was generated from my prior entries. And then I could add in additional if I want, or I could have just left those blank and put it all back here. So we've got it so it's sort of integrated that way. There's other direct expenses. In this case, I added ear tags, implants, so much per head. I went ahead in this case and put in some pasture maintenance. Now, again, as I just mentioned, pasture really could be a separate enterprise. It should be that's kind of how we look at it from the economist point of view. But you might say, I want to go ahead and just charge that to the cow-calf. And this is what I'm going to figure that would be. Overhead expenses, as I mentioned, I can just come up with a grand total that I would charge to the livestock enterprise, or I could actually go into overhead allocations. And that's where I would enter some individual costs. And then I would say, okay, so much of that cost will go to my crops and so much can go to the livestock. And then I come up with that figure. So I've got two ways of entering overhead expenses. So, basically that's it. If there's other revenue, we've already had sales over here. If there's other revenue, you could add that in. And then the report side of things. As I noted earlier, we can look on an economic basis or a cash basis, on a per cow or a per calf basis as we run a report for a cow calf herd. Okay. I can open up these details so we can kind of expand the report. It'll show us what we have in there we do have the value on the economic side of things of retaining those heifer calves. What did I purchase? So I can look at the details here. If I open that up, I can open up my feed purchases. I can see my cows, bull feed, so on. I can, all these things can be opened up if I choose to. Here's where it shows the labor paid and the unpaid labor, and so on. Okay. So I can open up the details and have a much more expansive report. I've got overhead figured in. I didn't include facility depreciation yet, but I might have a shed or barn or even fencing that I want to include in here that I don't have included in here yet. And there's opportunity cost on the cows and the bulls in the case of a cow calf enterprise. So again, the value of those cows that I'm carrying for the year, times a 3% return, provide some, again, this is a non-cash item, but it's something to consider when we're looking at total economic costs. So I can look at my return above feed, and this is on a per cow basis, what I would have for economic costs and a return per cow. I can look at it and go back up here and toggle on a per calf basis. I can also look at a cash side. So now we've got these 273 calves. I switched back to that 300 herd to look at this. And so here I'm looking at, this is if I were to sell them as I project and figure in most of my costs, I'd be looking at this as a return above cash on my cash side of things. And then there's a feed summary, report that I can run with this thing. Okay. So I've got this opened up. I've got this set up. I can actually run like 4 different reports here if I wanted to, or save them. You just hit print to download, and I can add the feed summary in, hit print, and I can send that to my printer. I can pick my printer here and print that off. Thinking. Or I can go back and save it as a PDF file and just put it in my files and name it and so on. So I have those, and then could print them off later after I'm done working with those a little bit or whatever I want to do with it. So that really is in a nutshell how you really operate this thing. There is the whole farm feature, cash flow. Again, some of these things we're going to continue to work on with the livestock side. On our enterprise budgeting for that. All these things are working pretty well on the crop side. And so this is really a pretty dynamic, it's really a pretty simple program to run. I would say, just like everything, the more you use it, the more familiar you'll be with it. And it's actually kind of fun to do. I always say, sit down with your depreciation records, sit down with your records that you've had from the last several years. And that's really going to help you think through and make some entries as you're looking ahead, into your different enterprises and doing some budgeting for those. So, okay. How we doing, Shannon?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. So,
Any questions from anybody that we can tell? Nope. We're good.
I think we're
You can put
good.
those in the chat. I don't know that they can go live, right? But they can put them in the chat.
Yeah, I think they have to put it in the chat or the Q&A box. So,
Okay.
and the
Yeah.
Q&A box might be called something different, but I just call it the Q&A box. So,
Well, actually, you just reminded me. So, like, let's say you get on and you create an account. All you need to do is enter your an email, and then create a password so that you have access to your account, and then you can start working with the program. Again, you can download one of our budgets. We
yeah.
have our talk about our crop budgets, but also since you've gone through this introduction of the program and you start working with it, I would just suggest that. But also we have Q&A sessions. So I schedule those periodically. So you can hop on Zoom and then we can look at things together because you might have a question that somebody else has a question on too. And
Yes.
we can do those kinds of sessions. So I haven't looked at that schedule, but it is on our CAP. I'll take a look right now on our CAP website.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, those Q&A sessions are really nice to go through because there's usually only like a few people on, so you can kind of ask different questions as Glennis
yeah.
goes through stuff. So it's very handy.
I've got those under the training sessions. I do have some tutorial videos as well too, if you want to look back. And I may need to be scheduling. I do have, let's see here. I do have a Q&A session, I guess, scheduled in November and then another one in December. And then I'll add from time to time to those. We do have a specialty crop training coming up in the early part of
December 1, yeah. And
that.
then looks like you also have a livestock one on the 25th. So right around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's right. So I just kind of plug my schedule. And then, but again, we'll
Oh,
answer.
you do have a question, Glennis. So it
Good.
says if I want to track a 5 year or longer time period in my budget, will this allow that?
Well, what you'd want to do is you would have to be entering those budgets, each year for 5 years, and you would have your printouts. What you do bring up a point that we would like to have is so that we can take our reports, and again, as I showed you, you can print or save those. But what we hope to do is be able to take this data as well and make it so that you can save it over into a CSV file. So if you did that, then you would have your totals, and you could kind of set those up in a Google Sheet or Excel or whatever you choose from a CSV file. So okay, but that is one of those things on our list of things to do. But yeah, right now though, you could definitely go back, or you could, go ahead and start on your budgeting, and then keep track that way. It's really not meant to be a record keeping program. So again, your records are important. But as you can see, this is kind of nice because it does do a nice summary of what you would project or what. And I've had that question where, can I go back and put in actuals? Well, certainly you can, and kind of turn it into from a budget to an actual. But there's still going to be some estimations. It's not actual records necessarily. It's so you can make it work as your own. And like on the crop side of things, I early on I had a question about that, where when I'm setting up that year, let me go back here. When I'm setting up that year, I could do 2026B. I had a 2025B, B for budget. And if I wanted to, then I could copy that budget into a 2025A and, kind of assume that's actual or 2025 actual. So as I move through the year, I could update some things. Like if I thought, well, this is the price I'm expecting to get for cattle, or I hope to get for cattle through the year, and then that changes, I could do some actuals if I wanted to. So, and you could correct or do it right here in this budget. But I've had those kinds of questions. So thank you for that.
I will say I've worked with producers and we put in actual historical because they wanted to try and do some benchmarking.
Mhm.
So, and they've just found it useful in terms of even creating their projected budgets
Yeah,
because then they could just go back and reference what was already in there. And they just pulled from their QuickBooks and Quicken.
yeah,
I'm just gonna say reports. So I was gonna say results, but I was like, that's not right.
that's
Reports.
right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. So, and I did show you on the backgrounding side of things. Let's just look, it's kind of follows the same pattern, but the report now, again, we have economic, this is that, again, a background enterprise. I can do here I can look at that gain summary. We looked at that briefly. This one is kind of really out of whack. It looks like maybe it wasn't complete. It was just Okay, but I can look and see what I start weight, what my,
Mhm.
obviously I don't have the ending weight in here. So it's not completed, but yeah. So it's right there. And then if I wanted to, I could print that right along with this report. So that's how that works. Okay.
Yeah, pretty snazzy. Pretty
Yeah.
snazzy. All right. Do we have any other questions or anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today during Ag Smart Money Week. The free webinars continue through Friday, and you can find the schedule and registration information at cap.unl.edu/smartmoney. Have a great evening, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes. Thanks.
Mhm.